Welcome to Abstract Essay, where the essay shape, thoughts find depth, and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. I'm your host, Daniel Lucas, and our today's guest. He's a firearms instructor, range safety officer, certified firearms specialist, and of course, martial arts instructor, none other than Mr. Christopher Thompson.
Sir.
Welcome, Mr. Christopher. I'm fabulous and excellent. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yes, sir. So appreciate you having me. Thank you so much. I'm Instructor Thompson of Dragonfly Defensive Arts, Dragonfly Integrated Defensive Arts. And so essentially for the last 31 years, I've been a martial arts practitioner. The last 27, I have been a martial arts instructor. And for the last decade, I have been training everything in the violence of firearms to specifically edged weapons. The company that we have today is Dragonfly Academy, Integrated Defensive Arts, my partner, Michael Sensei, and myself, where we teach people on the integrations of what managing violent situations look like from the very beginning to the other side of things. A lot of things that don't get talked about on dojo floors or even at firing ranges about what can happen and what options look like so people are best prepared to be able to defend themselves in the real world. Outside of that as well, yes, certified firearms specialist, which gives me the ability to testify in court on firearms and ammunition matters. And everything that we do, we try to do as one. There's a lot of places that have dojos and they're excellent. There's a lot of places that have firearms, but there's not a lot of places that make it all come together. And we felt that was very, very important because if anything happens to you, your options are going to be your options, but you'll always have to sink down to the level of your training to be able to defend yourself.
Well said, Mr. Christopher. Here on Abstract Essay, we salute you, we celebrate you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to us, as well as to the world. Thank you. So today, let's talk about all the hats that we mentioned a while ago.
Yes, sir.
Jared was brought to you at 12 years old by his father, a Navy veteran and family friend. Years later, he was murdered and brutal knife attack. You've said you promised his parents you will keep his name alive. What do you want people to know about Jared beyond how he died and how has he and what does his bravery in his final moments teach us?
Thank you, sir. There's a movie called Braveheart. You may be familiar with it. Jared's name was Jared William Wallace, and in that movie with Mel Gibson, his name was William Wallace. And while the movie kind of goes above and beyond the real story of William Wallace, he was called Braveheart because every man dies, but not every man lives. Jared led a full, short life and was one of the best people I knew. The realities of how these things occur are not often talked about, and I think Jared was probably one of the best examples of somebody who was living a very full life. He was unfortunately murdered at the age of 18. He was a rap artist. He loved music, was very passionate about his family, and this was somebody who, always would embody that carpe diem in a living life and seizing the day. He was always smiling. He was always joking. And there's always this problem with how these things happen. They always happen to good people. And, our society today, I think, largely has misconceptions because of movies and because of TV shows, because of media and video games about how things happen. And there isn't ever really there isn't a single voice that you can hear or listen to understand the whole issue of self-defense and violence, because they're not one thing. They're many things, and there's many different things that can happen. And so one of the things I wanted to share, and I promised his parents I would always keep his name alive, not just the bravery but for really embodying that every day, every second is a gift. And we must embrace that to know that we may forget another chance to be here in this moment. And I think he embodied that very, very well. And so what we do now is specifically to honor him and hopefully be able to give people skills that will save their lives beyond being a black belt or owning a gun or having any of those things. Just what can you do to have the best opportunity to survive?
Well said, Mr. Christopher. You spent more than a decade since Jared's death, cross training and everything you could find. Kali, Muay Thai, firearms, and more, searching for the real answer to stopping a knife attack. What was the most humbling moment in that journey when you realized that you've been teaching before was not enough?
Well, the night that we said goodbye to him as he was on a ventilator was probably the most surreal and insane moment of my life. That was completely eye-opening, but I think over the last decade, one of the things that I recommend that every martial artist in the world does, every martial arts instructor, everybody who trains self-defense, there is a drill in the Philippines that they use where they take a foam brush and they put lipstick around the edge of it, and you give one to a training partner and you take the other one and you spar with it. You can do it also with Sharpies and magic markers, but it's just a light spar. You're not trying to knock anybody out. You're just trying to touch the other person. And it is probably the most eye-opening drill that you could ever do. And a lot of people have ideas about mixed martial arts and how that looks, but it's not the same thing as real violence. And weapons come out all the time. Edge weapons are one of the most prominent across the entire world. Guns are, of course, very popular, but it's not always the answer. And the most humbling moment is doing that drill myself when I realized they got me everywhere. Every time you do that drill with a partner, you will see the red lipstick, or if it's a Sharpie, black markings all over your body. You don't have a chance to just block and counter. It doesn't work like that. You get them too, but they also get you. And it's drills like that. It's drills like there's a one we call the Tuller rule from a man, Dennis Tuller, who's a sergeant in Salt Lake City PD in 1983. He was featured in SWAT magazine, where they were testing if the average officer could get off shots when a knife attacker was inside 21 feet. And it's often quoted, not always understood fully, but if you ever do that with like a pellet gun, you'll understand very quickly. A knife man can get to you like that, and about 1.5 seconds, which is, it's not that you don't get a shot off, but it is that they will likely cut you repeatedly. And it's those realities I think that people need to understand, and how the dynamics of violence really occur.
Mr. Christopher, you said that even if Jared had still been training, it might not have mattered because what's typically thought in dojos does not scratch the surface. That's a hard
Right.
truth for martial arts and instructors to hear. What specifically is missing from traditional training when it comes to surviving a knife attack?
I think it's an excellent question. I think it's stress inoculation. A lot of people talk about pressure testing, which is kind of what that foam drill does. It's sparring is what that means, seeing if your maneuvers will work and techniques will work in the ring. But other than those two drills, when you do this, one of the things we like to do now is called duress training or stress inoculation, where we'll blare loud music and different noises, and people will be clapping and making different noises on the walls and on the floor, and you turn the lights on and off, flickering back and forth, and you use sensory stimuli to induce some confusion in your sparring. You also do it with HIIT, high intensity interval training, where you do push-ups or jumping jacks or sprints for a minute or two and then stop and then have to try to defend. There is a real issue with our biological part of we are humans, and that human anatomy is going to experience something between the brain. So I'm sure you probably know Your prefrontal cortex, your conscientious mind, is your rational thinking mind. Brain works in a couple of different ways, but it goes back to the amygdala, your fight, flight, and fear. When you're attacked, you go into your amygdala. So unless you're specifically training very intense things, you may not be able to pull off what you think you can.
Mm, indeed. And Mr. Christopher, half of your family is in the LGBTQ plus community, and the targeted violence they face is what you call unprecedented. How much of Dragonfly Academy's professional expertise and how much of it is a family member sitting at your dinner table who you need to know can survive?
That's a great question. Yes, more than half my family is in the community, and this is one of the main things that we wanted to strive for with Dragonfly was that everybody deserves equal access to self-defense, but not everybody gets it. And there's a big difference between training to get a black belt or even training to spar and addressing targeted violence. People will attack others because they hate them. And an attacker who hates you is not like a random act of violence. It is not like anything else. When they come with that kind of an emotion, it takes things to another level. But they also will face things like being trapped. They will face things like being ambushed. And these are not issues that are usually addressed on a lot of dojo floors. They'll talk to you about how to do things, but when targeted acts of violence are used, when traps are used, when people set up plans to ambush people, the entire dynamic shifts in how we would defend, because it's not just a simple thing that you can go to any school and learn. You can learn from many schools, but if we're not looking at not just the drills and the stress inoculation, but the specific targets that you face, we can't come up with the right amount of materials. We need to build it around what we're facing. If you know you're going to be attacked with a baseball bat tomorrow, you probably won't go to where you were planning on going. But if you don't know when it is or where it is, just that kind of thing is going to happen. Your personal plan is going to change, and it needs to change with education specifically.
Hmm. Very well said, Mr. Christopher. Understanding the difference between a dojo and reality is one of your core topics. For the person who's taken self defense classes and feels prepared, what is the most dangerous illusion they are carrying onto the street?
That's a fabulous question. That they're ready.
Hmm.
There's today, after all of these decades I've done this and taught, I will still have an extremely difficult time facing off with a knife attacker. It doesn't become easy. It requires constant practice and continuous learning and cross-training, cross-pollination. You have to go. I went to Filipino martial arts, but since I've met the fabulous instructors that we work with in Fight Science Workshop, instructors like Randy King, who's the author of the Timeline of Self-Defense, and there's people that do work in all of these areas that you have to be able to look at, your biology, that adrenal dump. You have to be able to look at what the aftermath looks like, because you might have 60 seconds of horrifying violence, but if you could be looking at criminal charges, you could be looking at civil litigation and being sued. If you go too far, there's a lot of aspects that don't ever get covered in that, and there's solutions out there. There's prepaid legal services and specifically education, like the literature Mr. King wrote, that if you don't take those things and kind of understand that it's so much of a broader topic, your sparring in your dojo or jiu-jitsu or any of the work, standing or ground, is going to fall short of what can actually happen to you, not just during, but before and after. The education, like most things, is the key to unlocking all of it.
Mm, certainly. And you say our choices when a knife comes out are, well, unless abysmal unless we are training very specific
Right.
things. What are the specific things and why are not they are being taught most of our self defense programs?
So I think most self-defense programs unless they are specifically Filipino martial arts or edged weapon disciplines like Piper, Medusa, things that deal with them like 52 blocks, things that deal with them like Instructor Hargrove does within arm's reach. There isn't, so there's a rule in Kali, and it's a generalization, but it's called the 97U. If a knife comes out, you've got a 90% chance you're going to be cut, a 70% chance it's going to be fatal. The odds are not in your favor. And as we mentioned with that drill with the foam brush, you're getting cut. It's not that you can't knock somebody out. That's possible, but I would give it maybe a 1 in 100 chance, because when those hormones kick off, when our brain goes from the prefrontal cortex to the amygdala and adrenaline and cortisol come in, the other person has that happening too. So what would normally knock somebody out with even just a punch isn't going to necessarily knock out anything. You don't feel pain the same way you do when you're in the middle of an attack, an assault, an ambush. And so all of this has to be kind of fine-tuned with it. I think as far as edge weapons go specifically, there is no one length of a knife that is not lethal. The smallest of blades to the biggest of machetes are all lethal. You have what I like to call seconds and no second chances. You have to have what's drilled into your gross motor motion, and the techniques and tactics that you train have to come out instantly. So we often talk about this with the flinch response. If somebody throws a baseball at your head, or you're at a baseball game and it comes flying at your head, you naturally try to cover your face. In that flinch response, you can use that, what you already do naturally as a human, cage up and try to take that from this to a specific block to protect your head and then move. So we talk about this with when you are under attack at all in any shape or form, but especially with the knife, you will have a reaction, like a knee-jerk reaction. Doctor takes a mallet and he hits your knee, and your knee just moves out, right? Your leg just kicks. It's a knee-jerk reaction. We also have a response, which is cognizant. So as long as you don't get caught up in the OODA loop, which is observe, orient, decide, act. This is from fighter pilots, but if you don't get caught up in that and freeze, you can train your body to have no freeze, just a slight pause or straight into fight, or depending on the ability, you may just go straight into flight and exit as well. But those are all encompassing things in just that one part, and about 20 other problems that knives bring out for us.
Mr. Christopher, the misconceptions of violence today is one of your focus topics. What is the biggest lie popular cultures, movies, TV, social media has taught people about what a real violent encounter looks and feels like?
Yeah, it's a great question. The biggest misconceptions around all of this, especially what comes from media, is that when we are doing these things, what looks good on a TV show or a movie may be something that happens in just a slowed down version. Even if you have the quicker versions, a lot of the problems here don't come from knowing and training. They come from, we think that we know what it's going to be like. I've never been in a real encounter where I knew exactly what it was going to be like, because every time is a little bit different. There's environmental, there is things like your clothing, there are a lot of different factors. And one of the biggest ones, I think, like you point to authors like Randy King and Rory Miller, you're dealing with a process predator, who's somebody who's like a sexual assault type of predator who chases people down and takes their time, to a resource predator like a carjacker, a mugger, a home invader. There can be a lot of cross application of those, but the people that are doing this, like Instructor King likes to talk about this all the time, is a stranger danger myth. You are far more likely to be attacked by somebody you know, family member, acquaintance, somebody you just see at a coffee shop sometimes, than you are to be by a stranger. It could happen by a stranger, but it's a very small amount of time. It's usually somebody, and if you look at all of the law enforcement details on this, most people know who their killer was. They were somehow acquainted with that person, and those things never really get brought out in the forefront. We always like to think of the bad guy as this clear picture of a bad guy and he looks mean, but it could just as easily be a family member. It could be a man, a woman, a child. the motivation behind humans in those types of things are deeply personal and very rarely somebody you've just never seen before.
Very well said, Mr. Christopher. And to wrap up our discussion for today, you've been a teacher for 27 years and a Kenpo practitioner for 31. Looking back at the instructor you were before, at Jared Death, and the instructor you are now, what's the most fundamental shift in the philosophy about self defense actually is?
That's an excellent point. I think that you're ever really ready for this type of thing. There's so many different areas of study and that we have to explore. I think Ed Parkers Kenpo was excellent for how he described being the warrior and the scholar. But we have to look outside our own disciplines. Get the best training from cross training with different teachers in different places with different experiences. Because every single martial art out there, including edge weapons and firearms, don't cover the full subject. And you still have to go outside of that into the psychology of what a human is and reacts like to be able to fully understand the motivations, the likelihoods, percentiles of actually surviving something, which most disciplines and Kempo as well didn't really touch on any of those things.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a beautifully articulated, Mr. Christopher. So, can you please invite our listeners to support Dragonfly Academy?
Yeah, thank you. So yes, you can find us at dragonflydefensivearts.com. We do different types of programs and across social media as well, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. And we'd love to be able to help in saving lives if we can and sharing our journey on the study of the entire subject, not just one thing.
Mm. I have one more question, Mr. Christopher, before I will let you go. Our listeners or viewers are healing to, or heading, I should say, to your website, dragonflydefensivearts.com. After this episode, when someone lands there, maybe someone who's afraid, someone who's been targeted, someone who's never held a weapon and it's not sure if they could ever use one, what do you want them to feel before they even click a single link?
No, that's an excellent question. I think, well, it's natural that you would feel afraid. First time I ever got a firearm, I was kind of shocked by it. I didn't think it would feel that way. It's intimidating. It's always intimidating. But to just know that that's normal when you treat them like tools, because that's what they are, then you can kind of habitualize. As long as you're doing safety practices with them, you can push away that fear and embrace the training, and your own ability to keep yourself protected should never be about fear. It should be about preparation and being able to go home to your family at the end of the day.
Well, Mr. Christopher, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Maricam. Yes, likewise. I will invite you again to be part of my Entrepreneurship 101 and let's talk about your entrepreneurship mindset. Maricam people, see you soon.
So
So again,